Hello, and welcome to Boy Meets World. I'm Ceej.
But it's Boy Meets World.
Every time?
Every time.
Every time. Okay, cool. I'm Ceej.
And I am Tony Curtis.
All right, yes, and welcome to Boy Meets World, coming of age story as told by two grown-ass men.
Yeah, just to be clear, we are colored men approaching 30, just to give you an idea of where we're coming from. We grew up essentially with Corey, but only via a television, and only via a television that had a knob that didn't work right.
Oh, yeah, dude, I had that same TV.
We all did. Right. We all did.
Yeah, right? Didn't we? I think we all did. All right. So this is a podcast that will reintroduce the world to Boy Meets World. It just came back on Hulu, which is how we're accessing it.
How is it possible that it took till 2017 for us to get Boy Meets World on it?
We still don't have Aaliyah on Spotify, so things just take time. That's all I'm going to say. They take time.
Every day is an uphill battle.
Kids these days will never know.
They'll never know.
Yeah. But so we are reviewing. This is our pilot episode. Mm-hmm. And in this pilot episode, we will be reviewing the pilot episode of Boy Meets World. So, TC, tell them a little bit of why you're doing this.
I was very interested in doing a Boy Meets World podcast simply because I don't consider myself an expert in a lot of things, but I do consider myself a Boy Meets World expert. Even just from the few conversations me and CJ have had, it's hard for me to talk about something without bringing up like specific like air dates or episode name and titles. Like all that stuff. I just know it because this show resonated with me more than any other show of my childhood.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think not only is Boy Meets World crucial for a lot of people our age, and I think a lot of individuals just grew up with it, and I want to come back to the importance of Feeny, but I don't know anyone who has an encyclopedia knowledge of a show as much as Tony Curtis has of Boy Meets World.
Well, it's one of those shows, and I've told you this before, I don't think there's a single problem in life that you can't relate back to a Boy Meets World episode. It's just good to know these episodes inside and out because, like, I learned lessons via them learning lessons.
Learned lessons? Really, I still learn lessons. Like I know. Like, I turn to Feeny when I need advice.
And that's the great thing about revisiting this is that we kind of realize now that these lessons still hold up, and that's probably why this show holds up probably better than a lot of other TGIF shows, is that it seemed as though there was a little bit more sincerity, a little bit more heart, and as they matured, the show matured with them. It wasn't Full House. It kind of kept a very childlike gimmick going the entire time. As they went on to college and everything, it really felt like you grew up with them and they were your friends.
Exactly. So for those who don't know, TC, do you want to give a little background on Boy Meets World, just on the show itself?
Sure, yeah. Boy Meets World was created by Michael Jacobs. I think it premiered in 1993. It stars Ben Savage as Corey Matthews. He is the middle child to Alan and Amy Matthews. He has an older brother, Eric, and a younger daughter named Morgan. We'll get to
At
Morgan.
times. At times. He has a sister named Morgan.
At times, yeah, when she's not in timeout for years. He lives in Philadelphia with his best friend, Sean. He eventually meets a girl named Topanga that he starts dating. And this whole cast just kind of goes through the ups and downs, this coming of age story of Corey realizing that he doesn't really know much about the world. He's trying to figure stuff out. And every episode, he's learning from either his friends or his teachers or his parents lessons that help him become a better person and figure life out. And I want to cry just thinking about it.
I mean, again, this show it's more than a television show. In reality, it's both a time capsule to where the world was. It's a time capsule to where I was growing up. And I think this show to me is what the retelling of Wonder Years was.
This was Wonder Years for our generation, for sure.
Yeah, but like it lasted so much longer, and it just grew
I will
up
say,
with
I
us.
think they had the same amount of seasons. I could be wrong. Boy Meets World could be winning by one season, but I know Wonder Years at least has 6.
Oh, okay. All right. cool.
So, but as literally, I think the year Wonder Years ended. It ended in '93, and then Boy Meets World started that fall.
Did we?
So we've never been without Savages from like 1986 to like.
As long as I've been alive, there's been a Savage on my TV screen.
That's the way I prefer it.
All right, yeah. Question though on that: did we ever go to college in the Wonder Years?
No, the episode ends. I think the series ends as they're kind of having an end of the year parade. It's their senior year. It's all ending. So
all right, cool. So we did go further with this group of individuals.
It's only possible because I will tell you they start at the same age.
All right, and then we do a time jump. Is what you're saying.
For those who watch Boy Meets World, you'll understand that there are years of these kids' lives that we are glossing right over. I think like they start middle school in season 2 and they start high school in season 4.
Look, what we were saying is those years weren't important. I mean, there's a whole half of the school we don't get to, so we're not going to nitpick on.
It seems as though they condensed middle school and high school into 2 years.
Well, to be fair, when you think about middle school, especially middle school and freshman year, so to speak, I mean, all of that can kind of just be blended.
It all kind of blends together. You're right. And
they're like, we're not teaching you anything you don't know. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's start with our new segment. We're going to go with a segment called Tell Me About It. That's where I read the Hulu description of the episode and TC comments. So this episode, Hulu describes as Love is a Many Confusing Things for 11-year-old Corey Matthews.
And I think this is a great description, not only because it really, in a very tight sentence, discusses what Corey goes through in this episode, but also what Corey goes through throughout the series of the show. I mean, he is confused by love, he's confused by life, but his confusion and the people who help him out throughout his life and his confusion are what make the show wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. I 1,000% agree. It's really funny because I do think that this summary, Love is a Many Confusing Thing for 11-year-old Corey, it literally drops us directly into where we're at. Everything we need to know about this character is given in that one sentence. And it's weird because very rarely is it like a one sentence description that gives you everything. And all the important facts are right there. Okay.
And I love that it says 11-year-old because you immediately know just like this is an awkward age. They're just starting puberty. This is the end of childhood and the beginning of like just teenagedom and just what all that comes with that. And it really just lets you know exactly where we are in Corey's life.
The end of childhood. Boy Meets World. Man, I'm really mad I didn't get that till just now.
Man, Michael Jacobs had you, man.
All right. So let's get into this. Get into the episode. So again, we are talking about the pilot episode, and let's just talk about a little bit of our opening shots. Again, our very first line in this is "Good morning, Mr. Feeney," and I think that's really important because that sets up the second most important character, I would say, of the series, definitely the most influential, which is Mr. Feeney.
I just love that they had this really strong student-teacher relationship be almost the foundation of the show. I mean, Feeney is like, there's episodes where he's not as involved. There's episodes where he's not the one directly teaching the lesson, but he is just kind of viewed as just this, he's the white James Earl Jones. If I could, that's the only thing I like, just this all wise and just filled with just all these lessons that he's going to make you learn in ways that don't seem as if he's trying to teach them. And he's the teacher you always wanted when you were in school.
Oh, I mean, yeah. And then what's great about it is immediately the first two lines of dialogue are "Good morning, Mr. Feeney. Good morning, Mr. Matthews." And even with that Mr. Matthews, it tells you who George is. It tells you what type of teacher George Feeney is. He respects Corey. You know what I mean?
You're right. There is that exchange of Mr. Matthews, Mr. Feeney. There's this mutual respect between them. Even though Corey's kind of a smartass to him in this opening scene, you know that he still has this reverence towards his teacher. He understands that there is that line between student and teacher. He's not like overly rude. I got kind of a Zach Morris vibe when I was was watching it again, just because the way he talked to Feeney seemed a little too smart alecky for Corey, it seems.
But it's an 11-year-old Corey in my mind.
It's an 11-year-old
It
Corey,
makes sense for an 11-year-old Corey. And I think what's great with this series and in this episode even is we get the beginning of this very immature, no cares kid who slowly learns that there's more than just his wants and needs. And I think that...
And more than baseball, which apparently is a huge thing for Corey now.
Yeah.
Does not
baseball,
stand the test of time.
Really funny. You pointed this out when we were talking earlier, but baseball is Corey's main love interest at the beginning of the series.
Yeah, it just seems as though it was just a way to really kind of make him this all-American young kid. There's something that's inherently innocent about baseball that I think really helps to kind of show you where he's at maturity-wise.
Yeah, it's so funny. I wrote my number one note after the immediate dynamic is cute innocence. Like, that is what Corey is. He is just cute and he's innocent, and you want to follow this kid wherever he goes, but he's also, in a sense, wise beyond his years. Like, just the back and forth that he has with Mr. Feeney, the bell rings and he's like, 4 hours till lunch. You know, it's just like, it's like a kid who clocked in and is clocking out.
Well, let's talk about this opening scene a little bit. So Corey has this kind of cutesy exchange with Mr. Feeney, who, by the way, Feeney has a full British accent. We come to find out that Feeney is from Boston, but for whatever reason, his accent is like 100% British, right?
Is it British? I don't think it's British. I've never seen it.
You never heard it as British. What did you hear it as?
I've always seen it as posh. I mean, which is a British term, but like...
I think the technical term for it is like a JFK Mid-Atlantic kind of, like proper...
A proper English. Like, to me... Feeney has always had a air of sophistication.
It just seems as though he went to Oxford.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if we found out Feeney went to Oxford, it wouldn't mess with what I know.
Sure. Anyway, so Corey and Feeney have this cutesy exchange, and then he goes back to the cafeteria table with Sean, who we meet for the first time.
Yeah.
And another kid whose name is never given?
Yeah. I'm telling you, we're just going to call him Third Seat Kid.
Third Seat Kid, yeah.
Third Seat Kid. This episode's Third Seat Kid because, TC, you have a little bit of trivia.
Oh, yeah. Well, I own the DVD seasons of Boy Meets World because I wasn't going to wait for Hulu to release it. So as they released, I bought them day of. The first 3 seasons have commentary, which don't even get me started about how heartbroken I am that my treasured season 4 and 5 don't have commentary.
Oh, yeah. You love those seasons, so.
They're the best. But in this pilot episode, you hear, I think it's the creators and the cast kind of talking about how they were kind of looking for a third member to fill that seat. And no one ever really clicked the way that Sean and Corey clicked. And it wasn't until, I think, the episode where Sean blows up a mailbox that it kind of just became like, oh, let's just do Corey and Sean and they're best friends.
Yeah.
And what happens is that Topanga eventually fills that third slot. But so that's kind of where the show is at this point. It's still finding its voice, still figuring out what it wants to do with the dynamics of its characters. And I think even in the scene that directly follows the cafeteria scene where you have these other kids in the classroom talking more so than you've ever heard other kids talk in a Boy Meets World episode. It just kind of shows that they didn't really know what they wanted to do quite yet, but they were still on the cusp of it.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, this is the pilot episode. And on top of that, I think it's really interesting because even if you take Sean in this episode, Sean's just another, the Third Seat Kid and Sean are on equal footing. These are just a classroom full of kids who go to school together. Whereas in later episodes, we know the distinct bond that is Corey and Sean. And that's not there yet. And as you said, I think we eventually get there. I think we get there pretty quickly. I think it's just a few episodes in where the Sean kind of becomes his best friend. Well, not only that, but also what's really important to me is Sean is at this point in time also just a regular dude. There's some establishment, especially in later episodes, that Sean is the cool one, and
yeah, there is a lot of backstory that's given to Sean eventually throughout the show. I mean, he's one of the best characters of the show, I think, just because of his backstory and the arcs that he has. But at this point, you're right. He's just another kid. In fact, they're talking about at the cafeteria table how late they got to stay up and watch the Tonight Show. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, how late did you stay up? I got to see the monologue. I got to see monologue opening guests. I got to see open. And they just keep going with how late they've stayed up. At no point does Sean mention like, oh, I live in a trailer. We don't have TV.
Exactly.
It's never said. Like,
but then again, there's a good chance that, knowing, of course, we know more about his backstory, but he's probably still could have done it. But then again, this is a game that they play almost every day. So if you know the beat, then you can just kind of participate and fake it if you want.
Sure.
Because it's like, what is it? It's like monologue, opening guest, bad comedian. Yeah, that's every late night show.
I like to think that Sean's not poor yet.
Okay.
I think it kind of gradually happens. I mean, suddenly within the first half of this first season, but it's not there yet.
All right, cool. So his father's still working at the plant. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Let's see his mom hasn't run away yet.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so that leads us to the next scene, which is we find out that we are reading Romeo and Juliet. Mr. Feeney is telling us...
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We glossed right over the opening credits, and we have to talk about it.
Okay.
Because this is the pilot episode, and this is the first time we're hearing the theme song for this part of the series. I believe it's the first 2 seasons that have this theme song. What are your thoughts on this theme song?
I told you, I find this theme song adorable. It is innocent. It is...
whimsy.
Yeah, it's very whimsy, and it's good for the time and subject matter. We are dealing with child issues right now. We are dealing with the innocence, and again, I think it fits. I know
just to paint a picture for our listeners who may not be familiar with the opening sequence of the first 2 seasons of Boy Meets World. It's literally 11-year-old Ben Savage in front of a green screen, just like people are like, hey, move to the left, and then like a giant cartoon baseball passes his head, or an animated paper plane passes his head. And
what I love more than anything is you're right, you needed to talk about this opening sequence because I
needed to. Well, it's my least favorite of the opening sequences. I also just don't think it's going to come up in other episodes other than the pilot until we change opening.
You know what? I will give you that. But no, it's funny. You were like, that green screen bothers that green screen you so much.
Oh.
But I mean, like, we get the I guess TGIF, especially knowing that this show premiered on it. We get the TGIF friendly version of this.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because in TGIF, at least at this point in the series, this was the only one that didn't have a sing-along theme song.
Well, true, but not only did it not have a sing-along theme song, but the focus isn't on everyone else. Every other show has like, we are a family and we've come together. This show is very much like a Corey is our star.
The shows start that way until an annoying neighbor becomes popular.
Yeah, but if we're talking theme songs, if we're talking TGF theme songs, I mean, even step by step, like everyone gets their own little moment and their cameo. And I think this show sets itself apart, first of all, in opening sequences, but then also in the fact that they're like, this isn't a show about the entire family. This is a show about Corey.
I would actually argue that the opposite, that they're showing all the family and all of it. Yes, it's revolving around Corey, but when you think about like the theme song for like the end of the series, where their parents aren't even in the opening credits, you show that this is definitely moved from a family-based show to a show about a boy and his friends versus a family.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that it's always about a boy and his friends. Because I think it's always about the people. If you want to look at it, I would say that the opening sequence always tells us who's the most important people in Corey's life at that time. Yeah.
In his world.
Exactly. Because in the very first 2 seasons, we get the entire family, Mr. Feeney and Sean. It cut to high school. It is Corey, Topanga, Eric. And then when you get to college, that's when we get a little bit more people. But as you said, the family kind of falls.
You really learn, if this is the if this is the fan theory you want to go with, then you really learn exactly when Corey started to care about Jack and Angela.
Exactly. I like that. That's a very good point. And I'm not going to lie. There's no reason for him. And I like this. I'm sticking with this fan theory, and I'm going to totally hold it down.
All right,
again, this is something that this is Boy Meets World canon. Yes. The opening sequence tell us at what point in time these people are relevant to Corey's life. Okay. So going into the first real scene, we are reading Romeo and Juliet, as all TV shows that take us into the classroom must start off with. And Feeney is telling us the importance of love. And we get third seat kid, who again, at this time, he has a name, but we know he won't be around for long.
Third seat kid. Yeah.
Yeah. He asked Mr. Feeney, if this is even important, can he just stab her with a knife? And there's this black girl on the table who says, and I quote, "You touch me with that knife, you better kill me the first time." And I get this as a show that's for the most part heavily white in its casting.
Bruh, are we getting into this right now?
Yeah, we're doing it right now. We get a little bit of black sass, but we do so in a way that
girl in Philadelphia, apparently.
I have to admit, it seems very real for her character. It wasn't like especially at this time, it's not stunt casting or even a stunt line. It's just true to how she read it.
Sure.
All right.
But yeah, so that's going on at the front of the class. In the back of the class, you have Corey, who's Sean is directly behind him. Corey has a headphone in his ear, and he's listening to the baseball game, the Phillies game, and he's giving Sean the play-by-play of what's going on. Feeney catches wind of this, walks up to Corey, takes the headphones from his ears, and he's saying it out loud to the class. And Corey's on the edge of his seat as this play's about to, oh my gosh, he's up at bat, and he hits it, and then Feeney turns it off. Corey, he's bummed, and he's like, why do I have to care about a guy killing himself over some dumb girl? To which Feeney gives this long, eloquent monologue about love and the importance of it, to which Corey responds with, "You realize I'm only 11, right?"
Exactly. Again, it's like we get this ba-dum-bump from Corey, like the rim shot dialogue. It's where someone will say something very meaningful to Corey, and Corey just has like a witty comeback. And again, I like it. It's smart aleck Corey, and I think it works.
What I appreciate about this is that where other TGIF type of shows might have just left that there, we come to realize throughout this episode that the Romeo and Juliet story plays an overall role throughout the whole episode. And that's what I really appreciate about Boy Meets World. They don't just bring up like the Elephant Man or like any of these other like classic books that you have to read in high school unless it specifically ties with the episode that it's going with. So
exactly.
it could feel really just like, oh yeah, they're talking about Romeo and Juliet in high school, blah, blah, blah. That's so cliche, but it really kind of transcends cliche.
No. And I agree. So also, I made a little note in here, technology in school. I just think it's really funny that with the Walkman, which two things happen with the Walkman. One, it gets Corey detention, so that sets up the later half of the episode.
Yes.
And to me, it's a great reminder that technology has always been a problem in the classroom. Like the phones are such a big deal now of like kids having phones and being distracted. But I mean, he has a full on Walkman that he snuck inside.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, just because I remember watching this as a kid and thinking like, do they make headphones like that? Because I had never seen headphones that were just the earbuds. I had only seen the
little wire band.
Yeah, so that was the first time as a kid I was like, that's amazing. Like I need that technology, not knowing obviously
where we were headed. Yeah. All right, so then our next scene, we go and we meet Corey's older brother Eric. And he gets off the phone and he just set up a date with this hot chick named Heather.
Let's talk about Eric for a second, because Eric at this point, if those who have seen the show don't really remember the first season, he's a very vanilla version of Eric. His older brother is very just basic, decent looking older brother. He's somewhat popular, it seems. He flirts with girls all the time. He kind of comes off, to me, he came off very much like Kirk Cameron in Growing Pains, like almost like exact replica of that. Just a suave older brother type.
Which, I mean, yeah, he does it really well. And we're going to get more into it a little bit later with like the next lines. But I also think that they didn't know the potential of Will Friedle at this point in time.
No, they didn't realize that like they had Jim Carrey on set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And so he plays it like a really cool older brother. And I have to admit, looking at this, I was like, oh, Eric's kind of like he's a pretty cool dude. I wouldn't say he's the most popular guy at school, but he's definitely. I
think he's just like middle of the road. I think that's just what we're supposed to get. Just like average suburban teenager.
Exactly. And then I've spoken to you about this before, but I have to say that what I love about Eric, specifically in this series and specifically in this episode, is there's a fan theory that we always see Eric from the perspective of Corey. So the fact that Eric right now is...
and you told me this, and it blew my damn mind, because it's the only thing that makes sense for why Eric goes from just a normal teenager to just... Like, there's a scene in the last season where he's trying to open a can like it's a jar.
Yeah, exactly.
He just goes so wildly dumb, and it only makes sense that as Corey grows up, his view of Eric shifts.
Yeah.
And how mature Eric is and how suave and cool and funny, all of that changes as Corey realizes, oh no, he's just a lame guy who's trying to open a can with like a jar.
Exactly. And I think that theory works so well, not only because of how we see the character grow and change, but it works so well because that's how, again, from the perspective of an 11-year-old boy, your older brother is just so cool and is like your idol. And then by the time you realize that your older brother hasn't gone to college, it's just like, it's trying to get by on his looks. He starts to lose some of his charm. And I think that's where we go with Eric in this series, but he's always hilarious. Always.
He is always great. We just need to talk about this for a second, because we have come across two different fan theories that suggest that Ben Savage's character has the ability to directly affect the world around him in ways that we've been unconscious of up until this point.
Actually, you know what? I think this theory holds for everything, because that would even explain why Sean is kind of like an average kid until Corey learns more. And then that's when poverty really kicks in.
Or the fact that like Chubby's closes the week Corey leaves for college?
Yeah.
What?
No. So this is not only Boy Meets World, but world revolves around Boy.
It seems like literally the world revolves around Corey, and as he moves through life, it's like you need to hang out with him or you could die, Minkus.
We haven't quite gotten there yet. All right, so let's move this along a little bit. So we go, and this another subplot that we get is that Eric is now got a date with the popular girl, Heather. Corey comes in. He's really excited about the Phillies game. And then Eric breaks the news that he's going to take Heather and not Corey. And
we learned that Eric has a part-time job and he bought these baseball tickets himself. So it's really his decision who he gets to take to the game. Corey's really devastating. He starts crying to his parents, blah, blah, blah. Eric promised this to me. It's not fair. I've lived with him for 11 years. I deserve this.
Yeah, exactly. Again, all of this shows us, this fleshes out the rest of the cast at the time. We get to see his mom, who's caring, but she's also involved in all of her children's life, Well,
the mom, actually, the reason why Corey gets offended is because the mom's actually really excited that the girl said yes to Eric. She's a great... Amy Matthews is... I think her and Alan are my favorite TV parents.
They're actually real TV parents. I mean, like real parents.
they're real, they're sincere. It doesn't ever feel like they're talking down to the kids. I don't know. I just feel like they just added such a gravitas to those roles just by taking them as seriously as they did, that they're, I don't know. When I watch Full House and when I watch Family Matters, it just doesn't seem like these people honestly care about these kids.
I'm with you. I think, as I was saying with Amy, in this one scene, she pays attention to each one of her children.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was like a specific thing that they did on purpose, but she pays attention to every one of her children. And in the episode, Alan does as well.
Yes. In this scene specifically, we do meet Morgan for the first time. I will say that.
Yes.
And we're also introduced to Alan and Amy, who I don't know have been introduced prior to this, other than the opening credits. So we're introduced to the family for the first time, and we also were introduced to this dynamic of Corey being the middle child.
Yes.
In my research and some of the commentary that I've heard of the creators, they really wanted to show for the first time the TV show from the perspective of the middle child. Because if you watch Growing Pains or if you watch Family Ties or any of these other ones, it's always from the cool adult. Like, you would imagine that the show would be from Eric's perspective based on television's landscape. But they were really the ones that thought, no, the middle child's always the one who's forgotten about. They're the one who's always the most awkward and looking for attention from their parents. And so they made Corey that. So in this opening episode, the whole plot is Corey feeling abandoned by his entire family. He feels forgotten about, mostly because of Eric's decision to take his date to the
which again is a very 11-year-old problem, and I think one that it makes for as low stakes of a problem as it is, it does hold some kind of weight in reality.
Can I bring up one thing about this scene just before we move on? As we're introduced to this whole family dynamic, we see that Corey looks nothing like anyone in his family. I'm only bringing it up because it comes up throughout the series that he's kind of the awkward looking one in his family. But it's true. The rest of them look like I would think Eric was their kid.
Yeah, I can see that.
I could buy Morgan being their kid. I don't buy Corey with his hair that... Again, the very first note I wrote down when I saw this was, he is my identical hair twin.
Yeah, you needed to put that down. And again, Corey is probably like the only white boy on TV I know who could sympathize with our hair needs.
Tight curls. And it just, anyways, so I just wanted to point that out for those who can't visualize this. He looks different, and it comes to play later on. So anyways.
Exactly. All right. So next thing, we're back at school. We are back in the cafeteria, and it's Meatloaf Day. Sean's has some fuzz on it.
Oh, I do want to say that we've also, we kind of passed it, and I just want to touch back on it real fast. When the family's all together, we do learn that Feeney lives next door. That's introduced by Amy, who's like, hey, I heard you got detention in school. And he's like, how'd you find out? And she said, Feeney put his face over the fence and told me.
And actually, Corey goes a little bit more in that explanation, and he goes, you bought a house next door to my teacher. I want to move. Call the guy with the gold blazer.
The gold jacket,
in the
car. And one of the things that's interesting about this is that this was shot around the same time as Home Improvement. So you have that idea of the neighbor over the fence who's really kind of giving wisdom, which, is this something that was a thing? That like a wisdom, like a neighborly advice? I don't know about
giving wisdom, but I will say that when I went to high school, we had a older couple that lived next door to us, and we didn't interact with them as frequently as Corey does. But like, yeah, if I was mowing the lawn or if I went out to even check the bell.
Like, you just like went to their fence to just kind of talk about what was bothering you that day.
Well, we didn't have a fence. Like our lawns just touched. But I will say that there were plenty of times where it's like, he didn't give me life advice, but he would just be sitting in his lawn chair, just like outside for no real reason, as older individuals do.
And I just missed out on this whole thing. It seems like, based on Home Improvement and Boy Meets World, it seems like it's really convenient to have a neighbor who knows a lot about shit.
I mean, yeah, and here's the thing. Now that you've mentioned it, I always try to get to know my neighbors. And I think it's because I grew up knowing my neighbors, and I just know the convenience of knowing someone who knows who's supposed to be in your house and knows what's supposed to be going on. And then also someone who just is like, now it's just like someone who can sign for Amazon.
Sure, yeah. And you know what's so funny? I'm the exact opposite. I see a neighbor wave at me, I filled with anxiety, I wave awkwardly and I walk away as fast as possible.
All right. Back at school, Meatloaf Day. Sean has fuzz on it, which again is a very typical television sitcom-y kind of thing. Meatloaf surprise. Corey says that he's going to try to go to the baseball game still on Friday. And Sean says that you can't go because you have detention. And Corey says, Feeny loves me. Sean replies, Feeny hates you. Corey, well, it's one of the two. And I'm like, again, I just love that back and forth.
And we're also introduced to this C storyline of Feeny trying to mack it to this other teacher in the cafeteria.
Right? Evelyn.
So you see them, Evelyn. You see Feeny and Evelyn. Do they arrange a date, or is it just kind of implied?
You're right. So what we see right now is that in this early of the episode, Corey meets Evelyn. He introduces himself. He says that Feeny hates him, kind of putting Feeny on the spot on purpose. Sure. And there's no real plan set right now. We just, from the viewer perspective, we understand that Mr. Feeny is in fact macking Evelyn. We kind of move on from that scene to the treehouse scene, where
yes, we come to find out that Corey, who's felt abandoned by his family, has decided to live in his treehouse versus living with them in their crazy baseball ticket rules.
Now, I will say, in the 90s, everyone had a treehouse, and I desperately wanted one. I wanted a treehouse so bad.
Watching this as an adult, I thought they were bad parents for letting him spend the night in the treehouse.
No. I think it's great. I think that it's a freedom to express himself. And I also think that this is
on a school night.
Well, I think it's one of those things where parents, and I will give it, like on TV, they do it very often, but I think it's one of those things where parents are calling his bluff. He's like, I'm going to stay up all night. She's like, I know you. You're going to be passed out by 9:30 the latest. You're not doing anything.
Yeah,
more.
This is a classic Cosby Show reverse psychology thing. I understand that. I'm just saying that it's Philadelphia. It's cold. It's a cool night.
Well, we don't know what time of year this is in the school night, so it could be a warm.
You're right.
But Corey decides to stay outside, and
his mom brings him some food. Actually, his mom brings him dinner to the treehouse.
I will note though, she lists that there's chicken, there's pie, and there's something else. And I was like, she brings a paper bag. What did you like? What paper bag has all?
Is there barbecue chicken sitting on top of pie? You monster!
Exactly. That's what makes me think she's a bad parent. That.
Yeah. It's really coming to the surface now.
But while Corey is sitting outside,
can I just say one thing about Amy? Her hair is banging the entire episode. She has wonderful, early Mariah Carey hair.
Volume.
I don't know how to explain it.
She's got volume. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Corey, while he's in the treehouse, he looks over, because remember, he's next door to Mr. Feeny, and he kind of realizes that, he can see into Feeny's house. Feeny doesn't know that he's watching him. Feeny's setting the table that we see. And what I note here is that this is a beautifully done scene, because we don't get any audio from inside. This is a completely silent scene in terms of George's perspective.
Yeah, it's Corey in his treehouse. He's eating dinner and he sees George preparing a meal for what seems to be two people. He answers the phone. Again, we hear no audio. George seems disappointed. He hangs up the phone and he puts the second place setting away for dinner and he sits down and eats by himself.
Exactly.
Corey, you can tell, again, no audio, no one's saying anything. He feels bad for Feeny, but at the same time, it seems like he kind of he's glad to have someone that he can have dinner with.
Exactly.
They have this really sweet kind of dinner together. I don't know how to explain it.
They have dinner. They're alone together. And I think it's really, I think that's important because it ties into the message later on. But that also is a moment where it shows us that Corey is more than just this bratty kid. He is observant and he is caring.
I think it just kind of, it's that moment when you realize your teachers are people.
Yeah, exactly.
And for him, he saw his teacher outside of school having a very human moment for the first time. And then he kind of, I think he's more receptive to what Feeny has to say later on in the episode because of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Then he has this whole bit where he speaks to his mother. I think this the next scene?
This is the next scene where Corey sneaks into his house to get underwear.
Exactly, yeah. And she says that they're leasing out the room, which again, I love this, the whole parents completely.
Oh, well, she comes in with the Nintendo gun and to Corey's back, and she's like, freeze, mister, or I'll call the police or something. And
she goes,
drop my son's underwear. What do you want with my son's underwear or something?
Yeah. He goes, it's me, your son. And she goes, how do I know? He goes, who else would want my underwear? And I think, it's just like a very fun, tongue-in-cheek little role.
He has fun with the kids.
Yeah, they do. And again, to me, they completely encourage these kids to follow through on all of your thoughts. It's not shutting him down. It's not, you're not going to do this. It's all right, you want to live outside in your treehouse? These are the consequences. We're going to lease out your side of the room. And, and I think it's funny because that little bit just continues as well.
Sure.
But what happens is Corey complains to his mom about Eric, and she says, you're feeling abandoned. And he goes, yes. He goes, I remember when your dad felt the same way. And I like this because I personally wouldn't know how to relate the feeling that Corey is having in a way that he would care, but simply showing him that he did the same thing to his father is actually a great parallel for an 11-year-old kid.
It's the only way he would be able to truly understand Eric's point of view in a way that makes Eric sympathetic in the scenario.
Exactly. And then even her lesson, she goes, people grow up and priorities change. There's no judgment. Yeah. She's just kind of, again, letting him know.
What she says is she sits Corey down and she's like, you know what, Corey, your dad felt really abandoned too. And he said, by who? And she says, by you. And then Corey freaks. He's like, what? I never abandoned Dad. And she's like, yep, you used to want to play baseball all the time with him and go outside with him all the time. And then you got friends and you moved on. And he's like, well, I didn't abandon anyone. And she's like, well, no one, that's not the point, Corey. It's just that people grow up and that their priorities change and that, the people they want to spend time with changes. And so she managed to take kind of a complex idea and simplify it in a way that an 11-year-old and really anyone could understand.
Not only that, but based on our earlier fan theories, I think there's a little bit of foreshadowing here. Because,
how so?
Literally what we just talked about. You hung out with your family until you got friends. And then, that's what I'm saying.
He abandons all of them.
Priorities change. People grow up. Again, we're getting the entire layout of the series in this first episode. What I just kind of want to mention this little joke that Corey goes before he heads back outside, which is, you were always cordial to me when I lived here. And again, it's a great line delivery. I love Ben Savage's delivery, and whenever he gets these little...
Well, he has amazing comedic timing, and we've talked about this, just how Ben Savage is, I think, the reason why the show was able to have the longevity it was able to have, because you could see him easily going from these comedic moments to these really dramatic moments. And he's able to handle both brilliantly. He's great with physical comedy. He's great with just, like you said, wit and timing. But there's moments where he could really, he's the reason why you're crying. And it's just, it's very powerful, especially from a child.
Exactly.
Talent like that. These savages just are producing gold.
It's actually really funny that you say that, because in our next scene, Corey's in detention and he's negotiating with Feeney, and we get a little bit of this slapstick comedy-esque where it's like he gets up, he's like, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna edge towards the door, I'm gonna, he does this little dance,
Yeah, and the entire time Feeney's just kind of grading papers, ignoring Corey as he gets closer and closer to the door. And then Corey finally is like, I'm walking out of the door now. Feeney says nothing, and then Corey just walks back to his seat defeated. And this stinks, or this bites, or something. And
again, it's like
supposed to bite. It's detention.
Kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Amy. I think everyone knows that Corey is inherently a good kid. So even when Corey feels like he's fighting the system, Corey's always going to be like, with no resistance, even at that, it's just like who am I fighting against? What is my stand here? So he just goes back to what he knows to be right.
Exactly.
And so I did have a question for you. Did you ever get detention?
I got detention my first day of 6th grade.
I believe that 100%.
I for whatever reason, I think it was just a thing in our middle school where they just gave out a ton of detentions the first week just to kind of like nip it in the bud right off the bat. Just to, like, any of that grade school nonsense we're not going to put up with. We're going to give you, like, everyone had detention the first week of 6th grade.
That's weird. That's very weird. I will gladly say that I didn't get into detention. I modeled myself after Corey. I was a very, very good student. Actually, I would be Sean and you would be Corey then. Yeah. I was definitely more of a Corey for the longest, like even up to the whole celery poster. Like, just it's.
We've talked about this. I've looked everywhere for that celery poster. I want one.
Just that wholesome of a kid. That was me. All right, so Corey informs Feeney that he watched him eat dinner last night. So he kind of says, like, he's like, I don't understand what's so important about love. You don't even believe in love. I saw you eat alone last night. And, Corey kind of like lets Feeney know what went on.
Yeah, he's really presumptuous. He's like, I know you don't believe in love. I know, because you and I had dinner last night and I saw that you got dumped and you probably hate love just as much as I do and let me out of detention. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And then Feeney
lays in.
The Feeney lays in pretty hard, I think. Like, he completely, like, he kind of stops what he's doing. He stands up. He kind of walks over to Corey and gives this monologue. I was kind of entranced by the monologue. Did you take any notes of it?
I mean, I did. I listened to it. I think, if anything, that in itself maybe put me in a trance. It's like I wanted to hear everything that he was saying.
Yeah. Feeney says something to the effect of Shakespeare wrote about love. You know, all these famous poets and scholars throughout history have written about this thing. How fortunate for you to be 11 years old and have figured out this thing that has,
one of the most complex
millions. Yeah, the most complex ideas. He kind of walks him through, like, the only reason you're alive today is because your mother and father loved each other and they decided that love was important enough to pursue and protect, and you are the result of that. And he kind of puts it in a way, again, like Amy, that Corey can understand. He may not understand Romeo and Juliet, but he understands his parents who he sees every day.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think what's even great, and this becomes a signature of Feeney too, is after he really lays into it and it seems that Corey is really thinking about what's been said to him, he lets Corey go. And I think that's one of the things is George is for Mr. Feeney. If there's a lesson to be learned, if he feels that you've gotten it, then you're free to go.
Well, right before he leaves, there is something I want to say, is that he tells Corey comedically, obviously, those who don't understand the importance of love are destined to be in detention forever. And, it's so interesting just because you have this episode where Feeney's basically trying to teach Corey that love is the most important thing, that, it's not anything to joke about. Like, this is something so serious, and Corey's kind of rolling his eyes, and towards the end of the episode, he gets it. And I hate to flash forward and be that Encyclopedia Boy Meets World guy, but when you fast forward to, like, season 4, Long Walk to Pittsburgh, where you have Corey. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you have Corey and Topanga, like, basically saying that, like, we're going to stand our ground in our love simply because of Romeo and Juliet. We believe that we are Romeo and Juliet. We believe that our love conquers all. And we believe that our neighbor, Mr. Feeney, our teacher, Mr. Feeney, taught us this for a reason. And it's just great to see how the lessons that Corey learns when he's 11, he still is influenced by throughout the series of the show. I think that's what makes Boy Meets World wonderful, because every step of the way, Corey is learning lessons, but he's retaining the lessons that he learns.
Oh, most definitely. Kind of to pivot back to the plot.
Yes.
We meet the next scene. Corey's out of detention. We find out that Eric had a bad date. He said his date was great. Like, Heather apparently knew everything that she was doing. She was comfortable. Eric was the one who felt uncomfortable.
And Corey's actually surprised to find out. He's like, what? No, you're cool. You're popular. He's like, no, like, newsflash, I'm not cool. And it's the first time I think Corey has this very childlike understanding of who these people in his life are. And it's when he realizes that these are three-dimensional flesh and blood creatures, does he stop complaining and more so start aligning and trying to sympathize with them and help them? You even see Corey in the scene talk to Eric, be like, you know what, you should call her again. I'm sure.
I would say, yeah, Corey's very selfless. He encourages Eric to call Heather and ask her out for a movie. He goes, a movie is where your skill sets are. It's like
he's like, you don't have to talk during the movie. You're great.
Yeah, exactly. Again, which is very wise beyond his years. Then he goes downstairs.
Well, Eric even says to Corey, like, hey, why do you want me to call her? And then Corey says, because I'm told love is worth it.
Yeah.
So even like right after his detention with Feeney, like he's immediately applying some of these lessons that he's learned.
I know. I absolutely love this. Corey then goes downstairs to have tea with Morgan, his little sister, which again, I think it's like this mirroring of Corey understanding what it's like to have a sibling who doesn't spend as much time with you as they used to. So he wants to have that time with Morgan while he can.
Well, the hidden like A, B, C, D, E storyline, I guess would say, is that the entire episode, like whenever Morgan is brought up, she's kind of asking Corey, hey, do you want to have tea? And he's like, no, not right now. I'm dealing with the stuff I'm dealing with, which is a direct correlation to how Eric is treating Corey, but Corey can't see that until
exactly.
Come full circle, and then at the end of the episode he realizes that he has been ignoring Morgan with her request for tea the same way that Eric was ignoring him. So he does have this really sweet moment where he sits down and has tea with her and is like, you know what, no matter how busy I get, I'm always going to be able to sit down and have tea with you.
Well, no, what he says is, I always want you to invite me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I think
may not always do it.
Well, no, but I think that's really important. I think it's like, I may forget, but keep me in check, keep me in line.
Yeah.
And then he apologizes to his dad. And he goes, I'm sorry for not always being there when you wanted me to. And I know you guys are going to miss out on that sweet cash, but can I have my room back? And again, we get some wholesome family closure here.
And one of the things I love about this episode is he's having tea with Morgan, and his mom is like, so are you going to put her to bed? And Corey's like, yes. And she asks him a question like, why are you suddenly, involved in Morgan, and why are you why are you spending time with her? And he just kind of gives out this, because I don't understand anything about my entire life, which is basically the thesis of this series.
Exactly.
It's just Corey confused and trying to figure stuff out.
All right. And then that is the end of this episode. Now, as the credits roll, but we do get an epilogue. And in the epilogue, we find out that Feeney actually says the words to Evelyn, can I take you to dinner sometime? And he goes, I make a really great meal. I cooked for my sister the other day. And he just kind of then throws it in Corey's face that, yeah.
Well, Corey realizes that he was wrong about his assumption that Mr. Feeney was dumped. And then Feeney looks at him and goes, are you confused? And he goes, yeah. And then he goes, get used to it.
Exactly.
And that's how the episode ends.
Yeah, again, echoing.
Yo, this is a strong pilot.
This is a great pilot.
This is a super
absolutely
strong
love this pilot. So before we do that, let's get into our next segment, which we will be called Feeney Taught Me. And in the Feeney Taught Me section, that's where we discuss the lesson of the episode, or the main takeaway. And I think we've kind of hit on it very, very often, but I did pull a quote from Feeney's speech earlier, which kind of says, there is no greater aspiration than to have love in our lives.
Beautiful. It's great for the show. I'm so quietly bitter that this was the expectation that was given to me as a child. I'm still a little bitter by it. I understand it's beautiful art, but at the same time, I'm scarred by this, guys.
I think absolutely. Mark Jacobs, Mr. Feeney, and Corey and Topanga have ruined all expectations as far as what I think is reasonable to have.
Yeah. No one's going to have a love like that. No one's going to meet their wife when they're a toddler. I don't know. Their storyline changes.
This show is the Instagram filter of relationships. It's like,
but I do think you're right. This was a great quote. I think that the lesson from the episode is resonated throughout every side storyline. it's this lesson of, yeah, love is most important, but it's not just this concentration on romantic love. It's the love between your friends, the love between your family, all lessons that make up what Boy Meets World is. You know?
All right. Yeah. And finally, we are going to grade this episode. Each episode, we will give it a letter grade. And at the end of the season, we will do a little GPA seasonal grade. And by the end of it, we'll know which season was the best overall. We know your thoughts, TC. Or I know your thoughts, but we'll let the grades tell us.
Actually, I'm going to give it an A-.
Oh, an A-. Okay.
It's a perfect pilot. Don't get me wrong. I felt like it was very strongly written. I felt like everyone gave fantastic performances. What's great, too, is that sometimes when you watch pilots, like, the way the cast, their dynamic changes as they get to know each other. But it seems like Corey, like, and Eric, they all had the same dynamic pretty much throughout. I mean, obviously Eric gets dumber, but it just felt like a show that was already established. The reason why it gets the minus is because of Third Seat Kid.
Oh, wow. He was that much of a demerit to you.
It's just, it's like looking back at like old photos, like family photos, and you see like an ex-girlfriend or something, and you're just like, oh, man, that ruins that photo.
See, for me, it's a solid A. I think, like, as far as a pilot is concerned, I will say I'm very forgiving when it comes to pilots because I understand that you have to find your sea legs. And
you're right. A pilot is very hard to do, and this one really checks all the boxes.
Exactly. And again, us knowing where the story goes, I don't think a single part of this pilot is wasted in what it's trying to tell.
Not at all.
So those are our grades for the episode. Any other final thoughts?
Just that I'm super excited to jump in the show. I do have to be biased and let you know and the listeners know that obviously I'm more of a fan of the later seasons. But I'm very excited to revisit the first two seasons and see how the show evolves and see if maybe there's things about it that I like that maybe I didn't like as much previously.
All right. So, yeah. And I'm just a huge fan. As we said, TC has seen this numerous times. I have
the DVD, so I didn't have to wait for Hulu to be watched. Like, this was like, guys, I don't think you understand. Like, there was a period of my life where this was just like a yearly thing. Like, all right, we're going to watch through the series. This is what I'm going to do between 10th and 11th grade and 11th and 12th grade.
I'm not going to lie. When I'm rewatching it now, so I'll be able to retain things a little bit better. But last time I watched it this way, I used to watch it. It used to come on ABC Family right before I would leave for work when I moved to New York.
You mean Freeform?
Yeah. Freeform. I'm going to stick with ABC Family.
I'm going to stick with Fox Family. All right, go ahead.
But so this show literally did get me through a lot of tough times in New York winters. But okay, thank you so much for listening to Boy Meets World. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Boy Meets World. That's BRUHMEETS World. You know how to spell that. And email us at brummeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Ceej. That's XTRACEEJ. And
yeah, you can find me at Anna Kendrick RT. Anna Kendrick retweets. I simply just retweet whatever Anna Kendrick tweets. That's just a little side thing I'm doing just for fun.
So that lets you know a little bit about who we are. And check us out. Make sure you come back for the next episode. And remember to dream, try, and do good.
Dream, try, do good, guys.
All right, later.